how do we really define things like progress or civilization even? And what if a lot of what we assume about, the foundations of our world today, what if it's missing something huge, something really crucial? Welcome to the deep dive. We dig into some fascinating material to find those, surprising connections and maybe forgotten ideas. Today, it's a really big one. The profound encounter, maybe even clash, between the European mindset and the New World, humans specifically, indigenous Americans. We're pulling from quite a mix. Petri Hakarinen's analysis, which is our main guide, but also historical accounts, philosophy, even ancient stuff like the Maya calendar.
Yeah, and our goal here for you listening isn't just History 101. It's more about exploring the completely different ways of seeing the world and looking at influences that got buried and how our modern ideas about freedom, power, nature, how they were really shaped or maybe even, bent out of shape. Hakarinen's work, The Encounter of the European and New World Human, is key because it brings all these threads together. So let's get into it.
Okay, so where do we start? The source jumps right into this, massive idea about cycles, humanity moving through these huge phases. Mineral, plant, animal, and now heading towards a human being cycle.
Exactly. The idea is we're supposedly at the end of the animal cycle now, in modern times, meaning we've sort of fully explored being animal-like here on Earth. And the next step, this human being cycle, is about unlocking higher potentials, soul-light stuff.
And within that grand scheme, the text specifically mentions the white race having a task. Guardians of the fire element. That sounds symbolic. It's not literal fire, is it?
No, not literal fire. It's more about light. The soul's consciousness, its ability to understand things. The source even links it to, the old Lucifer light mimer idea. In its pure form, this light, this fire is meant to illuminate, to warm, to ripen things, and interestingly, correct distances. Proper perspective, respect.
Right. So enlightenment, balance, understanding. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it sounds like this fire could be misused, badly misunderstood.
That's the core tragedy highlighted here. This power meant for the soul gets hijacked. It becomes subjugated, as the text says, to the pursuit of greed and power. Think myths like Prometheus stealing fire, or the prodigal son squandering his inheritance. It's that kind of fundamental misuse.
Okay, so the spark, this knowledge, it becomes a symbol of dominance instead. And the source connects this to technology, cars, engines, bombs, all using fire to control matter, or mater mother. Wow.
Yeah, it's a powerful image. And what's really fascinating is how this connects to other traditions, like William Blake's mythology. The source brings up Blake's figure, Urizen. He represents reason, but critically, not pure reason. He's called the god of reason and delusion.
Okay, so Urizen isn't just reason. He starts as firstborn of light, faith, certainty. But then he falls, becomes doubt. And his reason is described as a fossilized form of soul light. That's quite a phrase.
It really is. It means his reason becomes limiting. It imposes laws, confines energy, creates this mirror image of reality, not the real thing. And here's where it gets very concrete. The source links Urizen's domain, these symbolic silver mountains, directly to the actual Potosi Mountain in Bolivia, the silver mine. The flood of silver and gold into Europe wasn't just about making people rich. It fundamentally changed society.
How so?
It fueled the rise of the bourgeoisie, the middle class. It basically created the economic conditions for the kind of democratic world we know. It embedded this limited, maybe Urizen-like, reason-driven materialism deep into the system.
Wow. So the very wealth that built our modern structures might have been rooted in this flawed, limited version of reason.
That's the provocative idea, yeah. And the source goes further, saying Urizen's fall, his envy, created this world, Blake's Ulro. Not just the planet, but a kind of limited, illusory reality that we mistake for the whole universe. And this act introduced concepts like anger and punitive justice into creation itself, a real departure from harmony.
So this limited reason, this drive for material wealth, it wasn't just philosophical. It had brutal, real-world consequences. The source paints a grim picture of the European conquest fueled by this mindset.
Absolutely. Greed and lust for power drove the Christian world to conquest. That's the framing. And the descriptions are harsh. Earth violently plundered, borders forced by reason's self-righteousness, the planet essentially raped, losing that sense of equality with creation.
And this was happening while encountering cultures with a totally different view. You mentioned prophecies. Indigenous tribes saw this coming.
Some did, yes. And the source notes some cultures were already in decline, which is an important nuance. But their fundamental concept of respect was worlds apart. All created beings have an equal right to exist. Sovereignty from a higher power, not from human rulers. Seeing humans as just one part of life's endless circle, respect meant giving everything its own space, that light-given distance. Such a contrast. And we need to remember what was happening within Europe at the same time. The source doesn't shy away from the medieval church's dark side, does it? The torture methods listed. Flaying, burning. It's horrific.
It's brutal, and it highlights how this drive for control wasn't just external, aimed at the New World. It was internal, too. There was this systematic suppression of any knowledge or tradition that didn't fit the dominant Christian narrative.
Right. You see Constantine making Christianity the only religion, the destruction of ancient temples, the Apollo oracle shut down.
The burning of libraries like Antioch, decrees mandating death for worshiping old gods, figures like Bishop Ambrosius leading temple destruction, Emperor Valens ordering the destruction of all Hellenes and their wisdom documents. The source calls it a holy zeal for destruction that lasted, incredibly, for 1,500 years.
It's relentless erasure. But there were countercurrents, right?
Yeah.
The Gnostic. Yes, the source brings in the Gnostic view, like from the second treatise of the Great Seth. These sons of light saw the official church as a kind of imitation, a mimicry, teaching falsehoods, promoting fear and slavery. They were persecuted for seeking liberation through gnosis, direct personal spiritual knowledge, not dogma.
So, despite all this violence and suppression, the encounter still had this unexpected, almost revolutionary impact back on Europe.
Absolutely. Because the North American indigenous societies presented a model that Europeans simply hadn't conceived of. Think about it. Societies with no rulers, where individual freedom was paramount, responsibility was to the creator, not a king, respect for uniqueness, everyone having a place in the circle. Europe just didn't have the concept of a free individual or democracy like that then.
And meanwhile, the sheer wealth flowing back gold, silver multiplying 8 times by 1600, was changing European lives drastically. Plus, things like the potato from Peru, improving health, raising living standards.
Yeah, the material impact was huge. But the intellectual impact was perhaps even bigger. Early Europeans were frankly stunned. Thomas More writes Utopia in 1516, directly inspired by reports from the Americas, imagining this moneyless, egalitarian place.
And Montaigne, later, satirizing how the so-called savages actually lived better lives.
Exactly, and the indigenous people were equally baffled by Europeans, living only for money, women selling their bodies, men fighting wars for land greed. It just didn't compute. It highlighted European flaws.
Which brings us to that amazing Huron quote from the 1600s. Can you share that again? It's so powerful.
Yeah, it's worth hearing. "We are free and united in brotherhood. Each of us is as great a master as the other. While you are slaves of one man, I am master of my own body. I do what I want. I am the first and last of my tribe and subject only to the Great Spirit."
Wow. Just pure individual liberty. Unthinkable in Europe then. And that spark of freedom, as the source calls it, started to catch on.
It really did. You have Baron de la Hontan observing indigenous societies and introducing the Greek word anarchy, meaning no ruler, into European thought. Then there's a play in Paris, Arlequin Savage, in 1721, portraying the free Indian life as an ideal. It caused a sensation.
And this directly influenced Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Profoundly. It led to his operetta with Columbus yelling, "Lose your freedom!" And more importantly, it fueled his discourse on the origins of inequality in 1754, a foundational text questioning European society, inspired by these indigenous examples.
The line of influence just keeps going. Thomas Paine.
Yeah.
He actually worked with the Iroquois.
He did. Went to America, was a negotiator, saw their system, and explicitly used it as a model for what America and Europe could be. His common sense in 1776, pushing for independence, opposing slavery, that came from this interaction. He even helped shape the French Constitution later, bringing the spark back.
Incredible. And Thoreau, too. His civil disobedience ideas.
Inspired by indigenous ideals of individual autonomy, yes. Which then influenced Gandhi. It's this amazing thread. And maybe the most direct link, Benjamin Franklin and the U.S. Constitution.
How direct?
The Iroquois chief Kanesatego apparently first suggested a union of colonies modeled on their own league, and Franklin explicitly adopted the Iroquois League's federal structure, the Law of Peace, established centuries earlier as the blueprint for the new American government.
That's huge. That's not typically how it's taught.
Not at all. And maybe the most surprising connection for many listening, Karl Marx.
Marx, how does he fit in?
He was deeply fascinated by indigenous societies, especially after reading Lewis Henry Morgan's book on the Iroquois League in 1851. Marx took extensive notes, and when Engels published those notes after Marx's death as The Origin of Family, Private Property, and the State, Engels specifically praised the Iroquois system. No soldiers, police, kings, prisons, yet total order. He even said the ultimate communist society would basically be an industrialized return to that kind of free, egalitarian community.
So both democracy through Franklin and communism through Marx and Engels have roots in these indigenous models.
That's the stunning argument from the source material. Both dominant political lines trace back to this common inspiration.
Which leads to the big question, why did we forget? Why isn't this common knowledge?
That's the great forgetting the source talks about. These values, these systems introduced by American Indians somehow got written out of mainstream history and political theory. Democracy and communism both ended up distancing themselves from that shared starting point, that original spark of freedom.
And the consequences of that forgetting are, well, all around us, according to the text.
Pretty much. Loss of true freedom, religion replacing real spirituality, democracy taking on exploitative market ideas from monarchies, communism adopting state control, Earth out of balance because she's not seen as mother, loss of human respect, materialism running rampant, societies built on division and false boundaries. All trace back to losing touch with these roots.
It's a bleak picture, but it loops back to that initial idea of cycles, doesn't it? The indigenous worldview never lost that cyclical perspective.
Exactly. They saw the universe as constantly transforming, humans as just one part, the world being destroyed and renewed many times. Cycles weren't an end, but a rebirth. The Maya calendar, the Tzolk'in, is a prime example of this deep cyclical thinking.
Tracking these huge spans of time, the backtones, about 394 years each, leading to the long count.
Right, like a giant cosmic clock. And that brings us to the whole 2012 phenomenon. The prediction was the long count would hit this big marker, 13.0.0.0, around December 2012, marking the end of a 5,125-year era and the start of a new one.
And this current era is the fifth sun, nearing the end of an even bigger cycle.
A cycle of about 25,625 years, yeah, which remarkably is very close to our modern astronomical calculation for the precession of the equinoxes, around 25,920 years. The Maya saw this time, our time, as one of major Earth changes in transition.
And astronomically, that 2012 date had significance too, the sun aligning with the galactic center.
Precisely. Through Sagittarius, an alignment that only happens roughly every 26,000 years. It ties the ancient wisdom to these vast cosmic rhythms, suggesting these shifts aren't just human, they're universal. A potential consciousness shift.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, from ancient cycles and the misused fire, to the trauma of conquest and suppression, to the unexpected hidden influence of indigenous freedom on Western thought, the consequences of forgetting it, and finally back to cosmic cycles with the Maya.
It's been a deep dive, definitely. We saw how reason could be twisted, how power corrupted, but also how ideas of liberty found fertile ground, even if those roots were later obscured, and how ancient wisdom might offer perspective on our current turbulent times.
So the final thought for you, listening, is this. Considering everything we've unpacked, the cycles, Urizen's warning, that indigenous spark of freedom, the Maya's cosmic clock, what could it really mean for us today, individually and globally, to actually listen to that forgotten wisdom, to maybe rethink what we mean by progress or freedom? Could embracing a new cycle, like the Maya suggested, mean cultivating more respect for each other and for the Earth? How might understanding these deeper currents help us navigate the Earth changes we're clearly living through right now, maybe with a bit more wisdom? Something to ponder.